Hello, this is Wisconsin. I'm going to be talking about nationalism and imperialism. Imperialism is when a larger country comes into a weaker and smaller country and takes over all their natural resources and their power. This was very prominent in the West. These stronger countries would take advantage of their great military and use them as a way to take over those smaller countries. This was very used by the West to take over those countries.
Why, hello there, small country. Since I am larger, I will take you over for your resources.
When a stronger country comes in and invades a smaller one, that smaller one will begin to adapt to the stronger one's culture and ways. Imperialism was very prominent during this time period and was used to get more resources like sugar canes from the Africas and basically made them take all of their resources.
When the larger country invaded, they pushed their culture on the smaller country because they had more power and they could do it. This caused cultural diffusion all throughout the Western Hemisphere. Although imperialism was prominent during the revolutionary times, it is still used today and it is still a problem.
Imperialism over the years has changed and now has become more aggressive and systematic, and is now known as New Imperialism, and is still going on today. An effect of New Imperialism was when Joseph Conrad's book called The Heart of Darkness came out, and it basically gave us a whole idea of what imperialism was all about.
So, imperialism. Well, there's two factors for why it happened. The first is that they wanted to farm, and how can you farm if you don't have land? So obviously they wanted their own land, which is understandable. And the second is for military superiority, because how can you control the bases and the seas and all that land if you don't have a superiority over it, if you don't own it? And this started leading to population growth, obviously. Whenever they started owning the land, they started repopulating, and also disease like malaria, because they were communicating with tropical areas. So yeah. So during this time, when we're getting to conquering new lands and things like that, we're getting into Rudyard Kipling and his poem, The White Man's Burden. And this is a pretty popular poem. I know that I've heard of it, and I'm sure you have. So The White Man's Burden was basically written by, I guess the French, not written by them, obviously it was written by Rudyard Kipling, but they were in the Americas, and obviously the natives were not immune to their diseases, so whenever the French went over there, they started getting diseases, and it was talking about how, yes, it is good to help them and to help them be immune and get over their sickness, but also it's kind of a burden because they felt like it wasn't really their responsibility, even though they're the ones who gave them those diseases. So if you've ever heard of this thing called the Manifest Destiny, well, this is what the Americas used, and it motivated them to conquer the entire western frontier, which is pretty big, and that meant that they were basically entitled, that they deserved the landmass between the Atlantic and the Pacific. Like, who told them they deserved it? The Manifest Destiny did. And so after this, you're getting into Latin American wars of independence, and that was going to lead to freeing Mexico, Mesoamerica, and South America from Spain, and also Portugal, and that was during the early 1800s, which also led to the Spanish-American War, and that ended up giving the U.S. control over Cuba, Puerto Rico, and also the Virgin Islands, which made it an imperial power in Latin America, which is a pretty big deal. So as you may well know, after the U.S. starts conquering all this land and is an imperial power, what do you have? Slaves. We knew it had to happen sometime. They can't use these natives because they have all these diseases. But guess who doesn't? That would be the Africans. And guess who isn't part of them? That would be the Africans. So what do? They make their way over to Africa and they bring them some slaves to work on their sugarcane farms. Was this fair? No. Was this equal? No. But their culture was very different, and we have to accept that and move past it and live on. Free the slaves! By the way, this was called the Triangle Trade, and the slaves coming over here was the Middle Passage.
Nationalism is when a country or the citizens in that country have much pride in what they do. And during this time period, many people would express it in different ways. Most of the time, it would cause destruction between other countries, and others, it would balance out.
America! Yeah. It was so great. We got nationalism. We feel proud. So we feel so proud that we get some slaves. Then we got the slave trade. And the slave trade is not good because that is very mean.
America is the best. We better than you all. We better than Britain. We better than Spain. We better than Portugal. America.
Yeah. Yeah.
America.
The long peace of 1871 to 1914 is ironic since nationalism was very strong during this time period, but it was also when the modern Olympic Games were made and the Nobel Peace Prize was created. The turn of the century was marked by the creation of Jingo Sim and brinksmanship. The many factors that made Europe's diplomatic stability bad in the late 1800s and early 1900s was nationalism and all the pride that happened during that time period and the competition over empires. In the 1800s came to an end, smaller places and European nations began to largen.
So after this, we start to see a little bit more of nationalism in the competition over empires, and especially when William II, when he came to throne in 1888, he dismissed the skilled and also the very cautious diplomat Otto von Bismarck. I think we've all heard of him. That was in 1890. So then Germany started being aggressive and really forceful, and I don't think this was a very good thing. So William II, he needs to get out. And all in all, imperialism and nationalism, although they're old thoughts, we still see them a lot today in the world. So rock on, imperialism.
When a stronger country comes in and invades the smaller country, the weaker country will begin to adapt to their others. Dang it.
What you doing?
Okay. 3. Oh, you say it. My bad.
3,
No, kick me.
2.
This way actually
Betty and the Jets.